Hello, everyone. Today we are going to be reviewing three figures of speech, and those three figures of speech are alliteration, assonance, and repetition. Now, these three figures of speech have one thing in common, and that is repetition. So we're going to analyze what elements are actually repeated within these three figures of speech. All right. Yes, alliteration, assonance, and repetition. And we could not have had a more fitting image than the one that you'll see on screen because all of these figures of speech involve repetition at some level. Now we're going to commence with alliteration. What is alliteration? So alliteration refers to the repetition of the initial consonant sounds in two or more neighboring words, right? So from this definition, we observe two things. One, alliteration deals with consonants, and two, alliteration occurs at the beginning of words, all right? So when you have a sequence of words, a sentence, a phrase, what have you, right? And many of the words begin with the same consonant, you know that that is an example of alliteration. Therefore, alliteration is very easy to identify because all you would have to do is observe the repetition of the initial consonant in a sequence of words. And these words are going to be close together. So what I mean is that if you have a sentence, every single word does not have to necessarily begin with that consonant, but many of them have to, right? So that's how you would identify alliteration, right? But why would someone want to employ this literary device? What's the purpose of it? So the purpose of alliteration is to make a sentence stand out, create rhythm, and to allow for the creation of memorable names like Bugs Bunny or Mickey Mouse, right? So what alliteration does is that it makes language more impactful, more meaningful, and more memorable. Because when you repeat certain, when there's repetition of certain songs, you're going to appeal to our sense of hearing. So this is a technique that you will see being employed in advertising. Many marketers are going to use alliteration because they understand that we as human beings, we gravitate to anything that appeals to our senses. And alliteration is one of those techniques that does that. So alliteration is not restricted or is not limited to poetry. It can be used in a wide variety of arenas. Advertising is one arena one area that you will definitely see alliteration. So let's look at the example Bugs Bunny or Mickey Mouse. Now, I'm sure most of you are familiar with these characters. Let's say you did not know anything about these characters, but you hear those names. The repetition of the B in Bugs Bunny and the repetition of the M in Mickey Mouse. They sound cool, right? I don't know about you guys, but if I were to hear those names, I would be interested in finding out, what these characters are about because the repetition of the M just makes it sound cool, right? So that is the purpose of alliteration, right? It is used to make language to make language become more creative, right? And it appeals to our sense of hearing. Let's look at an example. And this is a very common example. Peter Piper picked a peck of pickled peppers. If you were to say this quickly, you may not even get it. This is an example of a tongue twister, and this is something that alliteration can create because of the repetition of the same sound. Peter Piper picked a peck of pickled peppers. So you see that of the 8 words in this sentence, 6 of them begin with P. So like I was saying, every single word within the sequence does not have to begin with the same consonant, but many of them have to, right? Or most of them have to. So this is an example and a very common one. Peter Piper picked a peck of pickled peppers. Similarly, Sally sells seashells by the seashore. You see, we have the repetition of the S, right? And these are 2 very common examples of alliteration. And if you were to forget one of the words within these expressions, just the repetition of the same consonant might jumpstart your memory. And you might remember, okay, Sally sells, right. So it makes it easier to remember because there's a repetition of the same sound. So you see the effect that it can have. It's not just about trying to make it sound cool or what have you. Yes, that's part of it, but one of the main purposes of alliteration is to make is to create a lasting impression upon the listener or the reader, right? So let's continue. Now we move on to a very similar concept known as assonance. And where this differs, where this is different is that assonance involves the repetition of vowel sounds in words that are close to each other. So alliteration deals with initial consonant sounds. Assonance deals with repetition of vowel sounds, right? So the purpose is going to be similar. It is used to create rhythm, emphasize crucial words in a word, and influence mood. Now, when I say influence mood, sometimes the selection of certain vowels can actually convey certain emotions. For example, if we say or this, or that, the or conveys heaviness, conveys sadness, right? So certain vowel sounds can actually convey particular emotions. So in that sense, assonance can impact our mood, right? Now, when it comes to the second purpose, emphasizing crucial words, well, yes, if you have a series of words that have the same sound, then the writer or the author or the speaker wants those particular words to be highlighted. And that's a way of doing so by making sure that they all have the same sound within them, right? And of course, rhythm. The assonance will make our language more creative and make it more appealing to the ears. So let's look at some examples. Go over the slow road. We have the repetition of the O. Go, O, over, O, and slow, O, road, O, and O and A will form a diphthong, which is a combination of 2 vowel sounds. So we have four O's. So that's the sound that is repeated. In the second example, we have wear the dress here, there, and everywhere. Okay, we have the A. We have where, where, where. We have here, we have there, and we have everywhere and where. Right? So we have the repetition of the A, that sound, that vowel sound, the A, right? So this is very similar to alliteration. Anytime there's the repetition of a vowel sound consonant, the intention at the core is to make language more appealing to our ears, more appealing to our to appeal to our sense of hearing, right? And by appealing to our sense of hearing, it will influence us to either, let's say it's advertising, to purchase the product or service, or at the very least, it will have a lasting impression, meaning that it will be far more memorable, right? So those are two figures of speech that are very similar. Now we come to repetition, and well, okay, alliteration deals with initial consonant sounds. Assonance deals with repetition of vowel sounds. Now, repetition involves involves using the same word or phrase over and over again in a piece of writing or speech. Yes. So repetition is going to involve speeches or forms of writing, right? And it involves the repetition of a word or phrase. And of course, why would you want to repeat a word or phrase? Well, we want to emphasize a particular point. If we want to emphasize a particular point, then yes, we will repeat that particular word or phrase. And once again, rhythm is created, all right? When you want someone to remember something, you will tell them whatever it is more than one time or multiple times, because the more times you tell them, the more you expect them to remember. So that is a form of repetition. So we utilize repetition even in our daily lives, right? So the same way we utilize repetition, that is the same way that authors use it. It is used for emphasis, right? So let's look at some examples. Government of the people, by the people, and for the people shall not perish from the earth. So this was a quote taken from the Gettysburg Address by Abraham Lincoln. And as you see, we have the expression, the people. We have the repetition of the people being repeated. The people, the government of the people, by the people, and for the people. So why would Abraham Lincoln repeat this particular part? He would do that because that is the focal point of his address. Even if I did not know anything about this address and I saw that line being highlighted, the fact that he has people, the people repeated, that lets me know that this speech is talking about the importance of the people when it comes to governance, because as you see, it starts with government. So whatever governmental system he is talking about, it is the people is the focus. The people are the focus, right? Let me rather say are, right? Yeah, the people are the focus of this governmental system. Hence, he says, of the people, by the people, and for the people. This government is about the people, right? So this is why he repeats that, to let people know that the people are the focus, okay? Similarly, in the second example, we have Let Freedom Ring from Stone Mountain of Georgia, Let Freedom Ring from Lookout Mountain of Tennessee, Let Freedom Ring from every hill and molehill of Mississippi. That was taken from Dr. Martin Luther King's speech entitled I Have a Dream. We all know who Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. is. But let's say we did not know who he was, right? The repetition of the phrase let freedom ring obviously would suggest to us that the theme of the speech is freedom, because he says let freedom ring, and then he mentions various places, right? So the theme of this speech, or the central message of this speech, is going to be freedom, let freedom ring, right? So whenever we want to emphasize, whenever we want to convey a certain message or, you know, make a point, we can employ repetition within our language, because once we as human beings, once we see something being repeated, it will automatically make us think that that particular thing is more important, or that is the central message, right? So that is the goal of the authors when they employ repetition, right? Yes, so this brings us to the end of this lesson on alliteration, assonance, and repetition. So these are three simple devices that you can utilize to make your language become more creative and more impactful. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next one.